Hello, this is S.K. Williams, and I will be reading to you Psalm 21. I'm also going to present you some information on a book I read years ago, and some thoughts I had on it. The book was The 21 Lessons of Merlyn by Douglas Munro. It was published by Llewellyn Publications, and is still actually available. And I believe there have been 2 subsequent books that were released as sort of sequels to it. But first, I'm going to read Psalm 21 from the Bishop's Bible. The king ought to rejoice in thy strength, O God, and he ought to be exceeding glad of thy salvation. Thou hast given him his heart's desire. Thou hast not denied him the request of his lips, Selah. For thou hast prevented him with good blessings, and hast set a crown of pure gold upon his head. He asked life of thee, and thou gavest him long days, even forever and ever. His honor is great through thy salvation. Thou hast laid glory and great worship upon him, for thou hast placed him in the blessings forever, and hast made him glad with the joy of thy countenance. Because the king trusteth in God, and in the mercy of the Most Highest, he shall not miscarry. Thine hand will find out all thine enemies. Thy right hand will find out them that hate thee. Thou wilt make them like a burning furnace in time for thine fury. God will destroy them in his wrath, and fire shall consume them. Thou wilt root their fruit out of the earth, and their seed from among the children of men. For they intended mischief against thee, and imagined a crafty device, but they could not bring it to pass. Therefore thou wilt put them to flight, and direct thine arrows against their faces. Be thou exalted, O God, according to thine own might. So we will sing, and with psalms we will praise thy power. This has been a reading of the 21st Psalm from the Bishop's Bible. And now, to resume what the video is primarily going to concern itself with. This video is about the 21 Lessons of Merlyn. Well, it's more about one specific lesson, but I'll get to that in a moment. For now, I'm going to describe this book. It is an ancient tome from the hoary and distant ages past. Or at the very least, it is a book from my past. You see, I got this when I was young, a teenager in fact, and the reason I got the book was because I was fascinated with the Arthurian legends at the time, and this one had a deeply Arthurian theme. But its real intention is to teach magical and occult knowledge to neo-pagans, based upon a presumed druidic rite. The book is, however, somewhat purportedly ancient. The actual book, The 21 Lessons of Merlyn, isn't said to be ancient by anyone. Even the author admits to having written it. He's not claiming to have translated it or discovered it or what have you. But he claims that the information in it came from the Book of Ferlit, if I am pronouncing that correctly. It is a Welsh word, and I do not speak Welsh. Well, anyway, the Book of Ferlit is apparently a book of druidic secrets, and he got his information from that. And he gave a condensed version of at least some of the lessons for his students. And it gives you a 21 lesson course. The lessons are framed within the context of an Arthurian story, and as such, each chapter is broken into 2 segments. One in which you have a fictional story in which Merlyn has taken on Arthur as his apprentice when Arthur was a child, and the 21 lessons are what Merlyn is teaching to Arthur. The first portion is, as I said, a fictionalized story where the lesson is summarized in the context of that story. Merlin is teaching Arthur. They have an adventure that illustrates the point, and Merlin gives him his lesson. Arthur asks a few questions, and Merlin answers them. The second part of each chapter, though, is the actual magical rite. It teaches you how to specifically do things. Now, I was never really interested in the occult or magic. But as I grew older, I grew to appreciate this book. You see, Douglas Monroe is infamous in the neo-pagan community for his less than honest take on druidic history and magical rites. Which isn't to say that everything in the book was faked. He actually did get it from somewhere. But it's not authentically Celtic, it's not authentically druidic, at least not entirely. And a lot of it has a lot of razzmatazz that people have rightly criticized him for, as well as certain historical inaccuracies. But I found my old copy recently, and I was thumbing through it, and I realized that some of it could actually be beneficial. Now, keep in mind, I don't really believe in the occult information, but I do notice some overlap in psychology. Now, I have a interest and am working toward an advanced degree in religious studies. And I'm also getting a doctorate in psychology. I'm in a doctorate program. So, what interests me is less the actual occultic theme and more the psychological nature of the book. You see, some of these rites seem like they would be able to help and be cathartic and seem to be very similar to rituals found in Christianity, for instance, or that are even used by modern medical professionals. And one of those rites, the one that most interests me today, is the Gateway Rite. This is a rite in which the practitioner, through meditation, can astrally send his spirit to an astral plane or a world of archetypes to which he would be free to explore. And he does so through various rituals and practices that he would achieve a heightened and altered state and be able to explore that world. This is much like how in psychology there is a thing called a visualization, which is used to help people overcome problems and to attain their goals by practicing it mentally in their heads, or working out problems by creating a sort of world around them so they can see it more clearly or from different angles. And I think that the Gateway Rite is really about visualization. Now, I'm going to run down the Gateway Rite so that you'll know how to do it, basically. Like I said, I don't necessarily think of the magical aspects as real, but I do think it would be interesting as a meditative practice that may come in beneficial for you to explore your own thoughts and feelings about issues. So here's how it's done. First, find a quiet place. A place where you won't be distracted. And try and clear your mind and relax. I would say for about an hour. When that hour has passed, or when you feel able, close your eyes and begin to meditate. Start thinking of a stone gateway. It could be an arch, or perhaps two columns and a top piece, sort of like what is on Stonehenge, or a rounded gate. But imagine a gate that does in fact have a top to it. When you can clearly imagine that gate, when you can hold the image in your mind as if it is a real thing, then imagine next to you or in your hand is a chisel or a brand or a stamp. In that thing you place a symbol. The symbol will be of the thing you wish to explore. It can be a symbol that already exists, it can be a symbol that you ran across, it can be one you made up. I don't think it matters. Take the symbol, though, and walk up to the doorway and stamp or chisel or brand the top of the gate. Mark it with that symbol. And then step back and wait for it to mystically open into a portal. Once you have done this, once the overall image is able to be clearly held in your mind for 60 heartbeats, you can walk into that gateway. But it's sort of important that you wait. Don't just stamp the chisel on and walk through. Stamp your mark and step backwards. Make certain you can still see the gateway clearly in your mind, and make certain you can still see the portal to that other world clearly in your mind for 60 heartbeats. After which, you may enter the gate. Once through the threshold, you are now in an archetypical world, and you are free to explore that world at your leisure. You can look around, you can examine the objects. If there's any entities there, you may speak to them. Do what you need to do, but always be mindful of where the gate is. When you wish to leave, you simply walk back through the gate and close it by removing the symbol. Since this is a mystical thing, really in your mind, that shouldn't be too hard even if you burned it in. Perhaps wave your hand over it or use an eraser or something. Just walk back through the gate. If you want, I suppose you could leave the symbol on the gate. Leave it there forever, for next time you wish to meditate. Or perhaps the stone is self-healing. It's a mental projection thing anyway. Now, the book said you can burn incense. It's not required, but you can burn incense. And it recommends ghost flower, juniper, or lobelia, or any combination thereof, including all three if you wish. But I'm certain any incense would do. In fact, the book says that itself. It also tells you a list of symbols, where things lead to, but not sure you need that either. But yeah, that's the Gateway Rite. It's actually a really simple rite. You simply imagine the gate to walk through and explore the world. It's more of a meditative principle, really, and it seems like it would be really calming and relaxing. And for those who are not into the occult, keep in mind that I'm presenting it as a meditative tool, and the Bible itself says to meditate, so it's not really that far off. But if you don't want to use it, you can't. It's just something I thought I'd share on this video. Speaking of sharing, I'm done with the Gateway Rite, so I'll give one final thing. This time a proverb. Proverbs, chapter 21, from the Bishop's Bible. Excerpted. We are going to end at verse 12. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, like as are the rivers of the water. He may turneth it whithersoever he will. Every man's way seemeth right to his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the heart. To do righteousness and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. A high look, a proud heart, and the plowing of the ungodly is sin. The devices of one that is diligent bring plenteousness, but he that is unadvised cometh to poverty. To hoard up riches with a deceitful tongue, his vanity tossed to and fro from them that seek death. The robbers of the ungodly shall be their own destruction, for they will not do the thing that is right. The way of the ungodly is froward and strange, but of the pure man his work is right. It is better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. The soul of the ungodly wisheth evil, and his neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. When the scornful is punished, the ignorant take the better heed, and when the wise is instructed, he will receive understanding. The righteous man wisely considereth the house of the wicked, and for the wickedness God overthroweth the ungodly. That was a reading from Proverbs chapter 21, verses 1 through 12. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you, God bless, and goodbye.